I am the Top Gun Maverick of hair loss. If they had Mount Rushmore for hair loss YouTubers, it would be me, Max Da Silva, Hairliciously. Actually, who would be the fourth person? Oh, I'll let you decide that in the comments. But here's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about the worst part about hair loss. The worst part. You ready for it? The worst part about male pattern baldness is it may not even happen. That's the worst part. That's the tragedy. It's such a tragedy that it's a comedy to a guy like me. I actually can LOL at the thought of guys who watch my videos and will never experience hair loss. And many of you have been open about that. You're like, hey Nick, I'm 20, I don't have receding hairline or anything. I just like your videos. I just watch them, they're entertaining. And that's one thing. But it's another thing for a guy who's, in his 20s, has no signs of hair loss, but is so worried that it might happen to him that he's obsessed with it. That is a tragedy as much as it is a comedy to me, and it should be a comedy to you. Because think about this. What's the bad thing about hair loss? That you might lose your hair? That this society disowns you? No. The worst part about hair loss is this. It may never happen. It may never happen. But what if you have to live your life in a way that having hair means so much to you, your identity, your confidence, your ability to be happy and feel fulfilled in life, that you worry your whole life that it might happen to you? Imagine the guy who does anything he can to keep his hair. And it's fact, I get these comments all the time. Like, Nick, have you tried derma roller? Have you tried lightning in a bottle? Have you tried this? They think that I care about hair, about saving my hair. And I know seems like a shocker to so many people that I'm the number 4 hair loss YouTuber in the world and I'm not trying to save my hair. Yes, I do use BRB shampoo, but they keep sending it to me for free. It's free shampoo. So if I'm going to get free shampoo that's supposed to help with hair loss, and I've got subscribers watching for that reason, yeah, I'll make videos about it, and I'm going to use the shampoo as long as they send it to me. If they stop sending me shampoo, I'll use whatever else. Who knows? Who cares? But ultimately, you may never lose your hair. Let's just fathom this. Let's fathom a guy at age 20 starts watching my videos. And maybe his temples are starting to go back a little bit, but show me a 50-year-old man with a full head of hair, his temples go back a little bit, but that has nothing to do necessarily with his volume of hair or his hairline. That's the temples, that's normal. I had receding temples at age 17. Don't believe me? Go on my channel and search, I think it says my first perm. Like I was 17, I got a perm as a joke. It's true, and you can clearly see my temples. I just think we almost need to just collectively LOL, like in all caps right now, that there are guys that are so insecure that they're going to worry their whole lives about this and think, if I could just make it till I'm 30, if I can just make it till I'm 40, if I can just make it till I'm 50, if I can just make it till the day I die, and then when they lay me down in the casket, that I still have a full head of hair. That's all that really matters to me. Playing this game, reasoning with their DNA, which your DNA determines whether you're going to go bald and how soon. That's part of why it's so funny to me. It's already predetermined. The moment you're born, it's already decided when you're going to go bald, if you're going to go bald, how soon you're going to go bald. That's already determined. So to spend hours watching my videos or somebody else's videos, or spending thousands of dollars to try to save your hair, the fact that has to be the scariest thing, right? It has to be the scariest thing to already have hair but be so afraid that you're going to lose it your whole life. I think that's why, hair loss is one of the scariest perceived villains that exist. I've seen basically every Marvel movie, and By the way, there's this guy named Ryan George I'm obsessed with on YouTube. I'm watching all his videos. He does those Screen Rant where it's like the pitch meetings, and he like totally tears apart the logic of so many popular movies. And he's not the first to do this specifically, but he easily points out how most Marvel movies don't really have much of a villain. Or if they do, the villain is evil. Why? Because they're evil. You know? And I think that if we were to really look at a universal villain for men, so many men, it's the fear of hair loss. Not hair loss, the fear of hair loss. And I've said it more recently. Nick Shell doesn't live in fear. Yes, if you saw that one video that I made with my wife and my parents, where we were stuck in mud higher than the tires, up past the door, and we were literally like this. And thank God we got out. My dad said, just put it in reverse and four-wheel drive, and thank God we got out of there without it turning over or us having to be towed out. We were in the middle of nowhere in the mountain of Alabama. I mean, I was scared. I was terrified in that moment. But I'm not, other than that, I can't remember the last time I was scared in my life. I don't get scared. I am not someone who lives in fear, anxiety, and depression. And by the way, to me, that's the progression. If you live in fear, you're ultimately going to live in anxiety, and you're ultimately going to live in depression. To me, it's that simple. And we can largely control how our brain works when we realize, you know what, there are certain things we cannot control in this life. And if we try to, we're wasting our time, energy, and money, and probably putting ourselves in a situation where we're more likely to live in fear, anxiety, and depression. So I think that's something that sets me apart from a lot of my viewers. They fear a thing that hasn't happened yet. There's a Bruce Springsteen song called Living in the Future. And he says, don't worry, darling. We're living in the future, and it hasn't happened yet. And it's funny because just imagine yourself in 5 years. Imagine that your hair may not even change at all. And then you'll look back in the last 5 years and thought, wow, I spent a lot of time worrying about that and it didn't even happen. But then you're faced with this situation. What are you going to do for the next 5 years? Are you going to continue to worry the next 5 years that it may happen? Because let's face it, in reality, every 5 years that passes in your life, there's a greater likelihood that you will start losing your hair. Now, granted, let's put me in that situation. Remember, in my early 20s, I was saying, oh yeah, when I get my 30s and start losing my hair, get receding hairline, I'm going to get a hair transplant. You know, that's how it was back then. But ultimately, here I am. I mean, okay, a little bit, somewhat. But imagine had I lived from my early 20s to my late 30s worrying about that. Imagine even if now I was like, okay, so I'm like less than 2 years from turning 40. What's going to happen when I'm 40? What about it in the movie This Is 40 with Paul Rudd? And he was actually older than 40, and he had more hair than I already have now. And he's, oh, but I'm supposed to have more hair at 40. I can't be the guy that's noticeably balding at 40. Oh, no. Or 50, or 60, or 70, and so on. The worst part about hair loss is it may not happen, but you waste your years. You waste your youth. You waste the years of your life when you have hair worrying about losing it. That is a paradox. That is ironic that you, the young man with no hair loss, you spend your youth worrying about the thing. And in that process, you're not securing yourself because you're basing your identity on that. And then you get to be my age, you haven't really lost your hair, and still you wasted so much of your life on this. I mean, can we just really acknowledge that that truly is the worst part? Like, because see, that is the universal villain. Hair loss is the universal villain for men if they choose, if they allow for it to be. Have you seen the movie Skeleton Key? Came out in the early 2000s. But the concept of the movie was, if you believed in this certain voodoo spell, it would come true and you'd be cursed. But you had to believe in it enough to like do the dance and do the chant or whatever it is. But if you didn't believe it, it couldn't affect you. You had to do the thing for it to work. And that's how this all happens. You have to believe that it's a bad thing. You have to be perpetually terrified that it's going to happen to you. So that's why I say guys who actually lose their hair younger, they don't have anything to lose. Part of them grows up a lot quicker, but they gain that confidence. So I actually say in that situation, it's pretty obvious who's got the better advantage. Do you want to be the guy at 20 who goes completely bald and faces it pretty early in life, but then gets over it and is very successful and confident because he was dealt a blow that most men don't have to deal? Or do you want to be the guy who's my age or older and obsessed with keeping the hair he still has and worrying that he'll be less of a person or be seen? See, here's another thing. The longer you make it with your hair, perhaps the more pressure there is to keep your hair. So there's definitely this paradox that the longer you go and don't go bald, perhaps it's still that much more of a fear. Maybe it's even more of a fear. You've got more to lose later in life. Hair loss is the universal villain for men if you choose